Thank you so much. We're going to take you through the numbers a little later. We're going to look at some of the biggest stories that have come through over the 2.5 days that we've been here with President Adesina and his incredible team. First, before we get things on the road, we have a very special guest with us today that will be giving us her experiences and insights of the Africa Investment Forum. I'd like to call on to the Honourable Minister of Planning of Niger, Kane Aishatu Boulama, to join me on stage and share with us her experiences over the last few days. Minister.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Aïchatou Boulama Kane, je suis ministre du Plan du Niger, gouverneur pour la BAD. Aujourd'hui, je suis très fière de mon institution, la BAD. Je suis très fière de mon président Adesina, qui nous a fait faire des pas en avant à travers l'organisation de ce forum. Ce forum que j'ai beaucoup apprécié, parce que c'est un forum où se sont retrouvés des gouvernants, chefs d'État, ministres, cadres supérieurs, se sont retrouvés des institutions de financement et de développement, se sont retrouvés le secteur privé, des investisseurs très engagés. Et j'ai apprécié les panels. J'ai particulièrement apprécié le panel où il fallait investir dans les femmes pour que l'Afrique progresse. Nous, au Niger, nous mettons en avant la transformation du monde rural et la promotion du secteur privé pour accélérer la croissance. Mais ceci ne peut pas se faire sans les femmes. On ne peut pas progresser en Afrique en laissant de côté 50% de la population, les femmes. Et j'ai vu ici sur ce panel 3 femmes exceptionnelles, celle du Nigeria, celle d'Afrique du Sud et celle d'Arabie Saoudite. Elles nous ont parlé de l'expérience, une expérience qu'elles n'ont pas fait profiter à elles-mêmes seulement, qu'elles ont fait profiter à d'autres femmes. J'ai vu des institutions de financement très engagées. J'ai vu un État, le Canada, déployer une politique, je dirais, volontariste pour promouvoir la femme. J'aimerais, Monsieur le Président Adesina, qu'au prochain forum, qu'on aille un peu plus de l'avant dans l'autonomisation économique des femmes à travers les cadres institutionnels qu'il faut, mais aussi en faisant en sorte que les expériences de Madame Manganès de l'Afrique du Sud, de Madame First Bank de Nigeria et de la scientifique de l'Arabie Saoudite puissent être des expériences qui peuvent être données l'exemple. Monsieur le Président, le Niger est en pleine réforme comme les autres pays africains. Je disais, la transformation du monde rural ne peut pas se faire sans les femmes. Mais la transformation du monde rural aussi ne peut pas se faire sans l'énergie. Et ici, j'ai découvert beaucoup d'engagement pour le secteur énergie. Moi, je suis venu avec des projets énergétiques et ces projets ont eu des échos favorables auprès des investisseurs. Je les remercie. La transformation du monde rural ne peut pas se faire sans les technologies de l'information et de l'informatique. Nous voulons accélérer la croissance. Cette croissance, il faut l'accélérer avec les moyens innovants. Au Niger, nous faisons la promotion des villages intelligents. Mais les villages intelligents, c'est fait pour accélérer le progrès dans les villages. Il faut l'énergie. Mais à travers ces villages intelligents, qu'est-ce que nous faisons? Nous allons développer la santé, nous allons développer l'éducation, nous allons développer l'agriculture, nous allons développer le village à travers le capital humain, à travers les habitants de ce village. Et nous allons faire en sorte que ce qui nous ralentit, telles que les questions démographiques soient des questions oubliées. Donc, mesdames et messieurs, je suis très réjouie d'être avec vous. J'ai eu à rencontrer des personnalités de grande qualité. J'ai eu à écouter mes dirigeants, le président d'Afrique du Sud, le président de Guinée, le président excellent, je les ai écoutés. Et, Madame Zuma, sachez que tous nos pays, c'est ce que le président Cyril Ramaphosa a dit, nous avons transposé l'agenda 2063 dans nos stratégies de développement. Et nous sommes en pleine réforme. De la même manière que les IFT sont en train de se réformer pour s'adapter à nos priorités. Parce que c'est ça l'essentiel. Il faut que les IFT s'adaptent à nos priorités. Il faut donc que nous continuions la marche. UA, donc l'Union africaine, l'ABAD, pour que le progrès soit effectif en Afrique et que ce soit un progrès interafricain. Vive l'ABAD!
The Africa Development Bank platform is so phenomenal. The connectivity is so strong. And the President's leadership is so amazing.
It's not about working for youth, it's working with youth around the table.
The advisory group's goal of really creating not just a few jobs, but creating a mass movement of extraordinary job creation for young people.
Just being able to work with an institution like the African Development Bank that is such a pivotal player on the continent and has so much influence, to be able to support them in channeling that influence and the way they support their countries.
The African Development Bank has a very important mission on the continent.
So whether it's the exciting program around coding, whether it's about investing in small and medium-sized businesses, all of these ideas are generated by youth themselves.
And demonstrate to them that they are the future.
We've got a huge task, but a really exciting one ahead of us.
Ladies and gentlemen, around us we have seasoned investors. We have the people that can make things happen in government, but we haven't forgotten about the upcoming entrepreneurs that are making things happen on the continent as well and changing people's lives on the ground. And that is why the African Development Bank Presidential Youth Advisory Group, in partnership with the Private Financing Advisory Network as well as Africa 2.0, organized the 2018 African Investment Forum Young SME Pitching Competition. So the last few days, we've seen young entrepreneurs pitching their hearts out to investors in the room. And we created a competition to allow these entrepreneurs not only to lure in investors, but also convince people of their ideas and that they have bankable projects. We whittled them down to around 6. And over the last few hours, you've been voting. We've got 4 awards that we'd like to give out today, most incredible entrepreneurs, incredible business ideas as well. I'd like to call on our President, Adeshina, to join me on stage to help give out the awards, sir. Yes. We also have Mamadou Toure, the CEO of Ubuntu Capital, that will be assisting me in giving out these awards today to our incredible entrepreneurs. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got 4 awards, and we've got various categories. So, the first, 2018 African Investment Forum Young SME in Energy is Vitalize Zambia, James van der Walt. So please join us on stage. Congratulations. So we move on to the next category. I'm sure it must be so tough to pitch to a room full of investors, but these ladies and gentlemen were able to work the room. Agriculture, the winner is YYTZ from Tanzania, agro-processing, a full-service cashew processing plant. Fahad Awad. Congratulations, Fahad. Moving on to the next category, and that was in technology. Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the technology section, Lifey-led from Cote d'Ivoire. It's the first African company specializing in the integration of Lifey solutions, smart lighting, and dynamic contents and digital communication team, Ange Balba. So not only investors heard the pitches, but we wanted to create a People's Choice Award so everybody gets involved, and that's where you had your say. The winner, ladies and gentlemen, for the People's Choice Award is Lifey-led and Ange Balba. Congratulations. Congratulations to all of the winners. Could I just get all the entrepreneurs, the 6 contestants that made it to the final 4, a photograph? I'd also like to call on the Presidential Youth Advisory Group as well to join us for a quick photograph as we wrap this up. Congratulations to all of the entrepreneurs on stage today. Thank you so much. Everyone's getting on stage, so the Presidential Youth Advisory Group, as well as all the entrepreneurs for a quick photograph, please. Thank you so much. Congratulations. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap up the photographs, I'd like to call on Ashish Thacker to stay on stage with me. Now, he's the chairman of the Presidential Youth Advisory Group. You and I know him. I mean, I've interviewed him and spoken to him so many times. I've had the honor and pleasure of speaking to him many times. He's the founder of Mara Group, but he's also about to change the way that you and I communicate through a very exciting innovation that he's been working on. And of course, that's what you do, right? You just innovate. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. A round of applause for Ashish Thacker.
Thank you very much, Eleni. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. My name is Ashish J. Thacker. I'm the founder of Mara Corporation, which is an African group present in 26 African countries, headquartered out of Rwanda. We all know the importance of having high-quality, affordable smartphones in everybody's hands. If all of our citizens do have high-quality smartphones, then this is going to make a huge positive social impact. From true financial inclusion to digital lending, micro-lending, micro-insurance, digital education, digital healthcare, agricultural efficiencies, truly enabling commerce. This will be truly life-changing. But we have some challenges. We need, firstly, high quality and affordable. We do have high quality, but they're not necessarily affordable. And the affordable ones are not necessarily high quality. At the same time, we also have 400 million smartphones in Africa today. Within the next few years, this number is going to exceed 1 billion smartphones. But none of these are made in Africa. We're the consumers, but we're not the value creators. And this changes now. And I'm very pleased and excited to announce that Mara Phones is going to be manufactured in Africa. This is going to be the first time in the Middle East and Africa that high-tech, high-quality, affordable smartphones are going to be manufactured here. Made in Africa, made by Africans, and made for Africa and the rest of the world. This is going to create thousands of jobs directly in the high-tech manufacturing space, tens of thousands of jobs indirectly, and over a period of time, hundreds of thousands of jobs in an indirect manner, which is going to make a huge impact and difference. I'd like to thank President Adesina. One thing you always push us to do is be bold, and that's why the lion in the logo, as you were pointing out earlier, is exactly the same lion as we have on the phone, which is at the African symbol. I'd also like to thank all the other DFIs that we're going to be working with very closely, and the Africa Investment Forum, where this has been a phenomenal convening platform and really made this possible and practical. I'd also like to thank the governments of Rwanda and South Africa, which are the two first countries where these phones will be manufactured in Africa. There are a lot of assembly plants that are being announced and being talked about, but we're going to be making, this is not assembly, this is high-tech manufacturing. So even the motherboards are going to be made on our continent. And we're looking at doing this with the encouragement of the Africa Development Bank and the President to do this across the continent, in all the regions from North Africa, West Africa, Francophone, East, and Southern. And most important thing is, as we've seen, and is the theme of this concept, that it's time we change the narrative. Which shift this narrative, which is why not only are we going to be selling across the continent, but we're also going to be creating pop-up stores and selling in Europe from next year. The way China has Huawei, Xiaomi, and Tecno, the way Korea has Samsung, the way the United States has Apple, Africa now has Mara. So just to sum up, for those of you who are extremely passionate about creating jobs in Asia, please continue using the phones you're using. And for those of you who want to create real jobs on our continent, please switch to the Mara phone. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you so very much for that, Ashish. So can I say that the Mara phone is the new Apple for Africa? The new iPhone. Can I say that? Hey? No. Are you going to buy out Apple someday? Is that what I heard? Well, we wish you all the best. I mean, this is the kind of entrepreneurial spirit that we want to see, and innovation we want to see coming out of Africa, with one big hope is to create more jobs and close the inequality gap. So ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for the final deal maker as we close the Africa Investment Forum. Never before have we seen a forum of this kind. Never before have we seen this kind of money on the table coming into a forum. I have been to so many of these through the years, and I have never seen this kind of commitment playing out. I am truly taken aback and in total awe from what we've seen over the last 2.5 days. Just to reiterate those numbers, we came in with around 61 transactions, $40 billion on the table. And we've walked away with interest of around $32 billion, and I think a lot of these deals have already been signed. I was talking to one of my panelists earlier, and he was saying, you know, Eleni, it's very hard to close transactions, very hard to close deals. And we've actually seen so much commitment in such a short space of time, and it just proves the kind of work we can do if we all put our heads together. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close this deal. I'm going to create the final transaction, the final conversation, and let's get this show on the road. I'm so delighted to announce my panelists. We've got Akinwumi Adesina, the president of the African Development Bank, who has come up on stage many times today, sir. Hopefully the last time today. our Minister of Finance, South Africa, Tito Mboweni. The Premier of Gauteng, David Makura. Niale Kabe, the Minister of Planning and Development, Côte d'Ivoire. Patrick Dlamini, the CEO of the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Professor Benedict Orama, the President of the Africa Export-Import Bank. Admasu Tadese, President of the Trade and Development Bank. Alan Ebobise, the CEO of Africa 50. Malam Samaila Zubaru, the CEO of the African Finance Corporation. Ambros Fayol, the Vice President of the European Investment Bank. And Gloria Serobe, the CEO of WIP Capital. Very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, fantastic panelists joining me today as we close up the session. I was reiterating some of those numbers, and I think it's really important to just put it into perspective, and who better to do that for us? I know that you spoke about it a little earlier. Things are changing by the minute. What is your main takeaway from these 2.5 days, President Adesina?
Well, thank you very much, Eleni. I think my main takeaway is that there's rising confidence in Africa's being an investment destination. And my big takeaway also is that you have African investors that are actually putting their money on the continent. My main takeaway is that you have African sovereign wealth funds that are also putting some of their monies into Africa. So, for example, I know that in the case of where we are today, we have sovereign wealth funds of Nigeria, Gabon, and Ghana putting their money behind transactions, so that the sovereign wealth funds of Africa will not become sovereign wealth funds of others. You know, it has to be sovereign for us. Charity begins at home. Of course, as I said, we also had a closure of 45 deals for a total of $32 billion. That is incredible for a first forum to be held, Africa Investment Forum. I am thankful for the investors. I'm thankful for the confidence they have in Africa. Africa has grown up. Africa will not be developed by aid, it will be developed by investment, and I think you're beginning to see that.
And investment coming from the continent, it seems, as well.
Absolutely.
And putting money to work. Minister Mboweni, South Africa is also on a big drive to try and ensure that we've got investment coming in. We're looking at $100 billion over the next 5 years. How much of that do you think we can leverage from the continent when you see the kind of deals that have been put on the table over the last 2.5 days? Have you ever seen something like this before coming through from the continent?
Thank you very much. I think that we should thank the African Development Bank for this initiative, and it's very, very positive, showing the way forward. There have been many forums organized for us by other people, and more so outside Africa. And to have a forum like this in Africa, I think it's really commendable. I think on the South African side, we probably missed some opportunities. We didn't take advantage of all of them. We just have to work a little harder. We have a huge infrastructure campaign here at home, and I'm quite certain that domestic investors, institutions, pension funds will also come to the table here at home, including, of course, funding from other partner countries. So I think there is hope, and I think there is a future.
Thank you, sir. Professor Orama, what were the biggest challenges you experienced in terms of looking at finalizing deals over the last few days that you were able to find solutions to just by conversing and meeting people face to face?
Yeah, thank you very much. and thank you, Mr. President, Honorable Minister, and colleagues. I think I add to the takeaways because that also answers your question. I think my experience these past 3 days confirmed to me the power of platform. If we didn't have this platform, I've been in banking for years, and I never had an opportunity to close 15 billion or to discuss serious $15 billion deals in 2 days. We did it here. It also made it possible for us to have a framework arrangement with partners for risk sharing amounting to $500 million. That would not have happened if we didn't have this platform. We had the opportunity also to launch our project preparation facility. It also confirms to me the power of vision. Last night I was just wondering, I said, if the late Dr. Ndiaye did not create Afrexim Bank, TDB, and other banks, African Development Bank would have been standing here alone, and I don't think we'll be talking about $32 billion today. And that vision has now been carried forward by President Adesina. Next 10 years, next 15 years, we will be saying that the vision of President Adesina has made it possible for Africa to retake its future, to retake its development in its own hands. And I believe that that will come to pass. So with all the opportunities we've seen here, all the people we've met here, all the discussions we've had here, we've been able to achieve more than we expected when we set out to come here. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Professor. Appreciated. Premier, you are the Premier of Gauteng. It's the powerhouse of the continent, isn't it? Yeah?
Kind of.
It absolutely is. I mean, incredible province that is growing from strength to strength, but with its own set of issues. What have you seen coming through over the last few days that would make sense in terms of investment into the province? And have you been scouting specific things?
Yes, thank you very much, Eleni. Firstly, just allow me to thank Minister Dlamini Zuma and Minister Mboweni. I want in front of you I want the people here to know that they have been the foremost champions and supporters of the hosting of this Africa Investment Forum. In Cabinet, together with the President, the three ministers have been key in getting this going. I have an opportunity to also just say, of the $32 billion, what is in it for South Africa? And I'm very happy that $6.8 billion of that $32 billion is about the South African projects. It's coming.
Just repeat that number for us.
$6.8 billion of that. Now, this is a contribution to the President's drive towards the $100 billion. If there's something that we have learned from this, I think we who are in government, and I said yesterday that even those who are in cities and regional governments, I've learned that we can do much more to ensure that our own jurisdictions attract investment as part of our national drive. So this has been a humbling experience, and I sat in one boardroom. That's when the South African consortium signed a deal with Ghana. Yeah. It was an amazing experience. And that was the deal of $3.6 billion. In that one, it's an investment from South Africa into Ghana. It's very satisfying. Yes, of course, I'm here and the ministers are here and our Deputy Minister of Energy. We're here, of course, to also ensure these deals come into our economy. But we are very proud that there are also South African companies that are investing in other African countries. So this is very fulfilling.
So
it's very satisfying for us.
Intra-Africa investment, Mr. President, you wanted to add something?
No, I just going to say I was just talking to Minister of Finance, Tito, and he was reminding me when you were saying, well, you know, my big sister, Dlamini Zuma, yourself, and himself, and President, you know, and he was saying to me, it was the lunch. And I had to tell you what the lunch was, because when we came to see President Ramaphosa, we were, you know, he was running a cabinet meeting, so we were a bit, we were asked to stay, and so he was running late. And then, of course, Minister Tito just became minister, so I was on ground here. And then he offered us lunch. And we were eating this lunch, and the transaction started right from there. And then I told the president, Mr. President, you know, you don't have to apologize. He was apologizing for the lateness in which we started the meeting. I said to the Minister Tito, I said, Minister, Mr. President, if what we get is a presidential lunch for being late, please, I will want to be late all the time so that we can have presidential lunch. And most importantly, at the end of the lunch, he stretched forth his hand. He said, all systems go. So the fact that we are here today was because of that powerful statement President Ramaphosa said. He said, all systems go. I think that context is important to know.
Thank you for that. Minister Kaba, I'd like to throw a question to you. And Côte d'Ivoire is one of the fastest growing economies on the continent. In fact, it's just only second to, I think, Ethiopia. It's around 7.4%. An incredible powerhouse. We keep saying that it's off a low base for a lot of these economies that are growing very fast. But what are you doing to synergize and to catalyze the opportunities on the ground? And what have you seen over the last 2.5 days that has excited you by way of possible investments?
Écoutez, je vous remercie. Effectivement, on a vu 2 jours formidables qui certainement vont donc, qui nous ont montré tout le potentiel pour nos pays d'accélérer l'investissement. En Côte d'Ivoire, bien entendu, vous l'avez dit, l'économie se porte bien. Nous faisons beaucoup de réformes pour améliorer l'environnement des affaires, beaucoup de réformes pour attirer les investisseurs, bien entendu avec des investissements publics pour créer le cadre de l'investissement. Il faut porter cela à l'échelle. Il faut que le secteur privé puisse accompagner l'État pour créer le cadre et prendre en charge, donc donner du boulot à notre formidable jeunesse. Nous sommes comme tous les pays africains, des pays jeunes. J'ai vu ici donc une opportunité pour aller vite. Et la Côte d'Ivoire est venue avec 3 projets importants, 3 projets structurants qui ont créé de l'engouement. Ce que nous souhaitons, c'est que pour nous-mêmes et pour tous ceux qui sont venus, les deals qui ont commencé à se nouer ici puissent se conclure. Je pense que c'est le plus important, que cela se traduise en investissement réel sur le terrain, que l'édition ne soit pas la dernière, mais qu'entre l'édition 2018 aujourd'hui et la prochaine fois, et j'espère que le président Adesina va nous inviter, que la prochaine fois, bien sûr, nous nous donnions le temps de préparer davantage de projets, que nous venions avec des deals plus faciles à conclure pour que, bien sûr, l'Afrique puisse aller encore plus en avant et plus rapidement. Je vous remercie.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Minister. And that's such a good point, Mr. Bobise, because at the end of the day, we've got to come prepared, we've got to have the deals ready, they've got to be bankable. Do you think that we can de-risk some of the projects when we come together in these rooms where we've got all our ducks in a row and we're ready to say, hey, this is a bankable deal, this is a deal that can go through and can go through very quickly? What has your experience been?
That was for me.
Yeah.
For me.
Thank you, Mr. Bobise.
Thank you, Eleni. I think
when I spoke at this very panel at the opening ceremony, I gave two figures. I said, on average, Africa received about $8 billion of private investment in infrastructure over the last 5 years, annually. And Latin America received $45 billion on average, yearly, private investment in infrastructure. I was thinking we can close that gap over maybe 6 to 7 years to get to, from $8 billion a year to $45 billion a year. But after this forum, I believe we should be able to close that gap within 2 to 3 years. That's a tall order, but that's the objective that this forum is giving me the confidence that we can achieve, because this forum is all about accelerating the implementation. And yes, how did we de-risk some of the projects that we actually discussed in the boardrooms? That de-risking process was happening in the boardrooms. In the case of Africa 50, just one example, one of the projects that we signed in the boardroom, the de-risking process involved having the Prime Minister of Rwanda sitting in the boardroom, talking to investors, addressing issues that were raised. And this is how you get to a consensus. You give confidence to investors, and they're able to bank to say, okay, we're going to follow this or not. So we signed a couple of projects, iconic project, Kigali Innovation City, and the bridge between two Congos, connecting two countries of Africa, which are separated only by a river, but they have no physical connection. We're going to do a bridge over over the Congo, and people from the two countries will be traveling back and forth so easily. Huge development impact, but also good returns. There is nothing wrong with making money if you deliver good services.
Absolutely, because that's what it's all about, right?
Yes.
Risk, reward. Mr. Tadese, I'd like to talk about the linkage of the continent and getting rid of our barriers. How do we do this? I know the Continental Free Trade Area has now gained momentum, it's gained traction. Some countries haven't completely signed up to it. But did you see any issues with linking countries and embarking on investment, taking into account some of the trade barriers that currently exist? And are you feeling hopeful that we can bring down those barriers?
Very good question. Well, to be honest, I think a forum like this is very focused on transactions, and so many of the conversations we've had have been focused around concluding deals, closing deals, advancing deals in the pipeline, and identifying new deals. Of course, many of these deals work on assumptions around access to markets and being able to have a bigger scope of clientele out in the cross-border space. For me, I think this forum has been very, very productive, because we were able to have very intense conversations with a whole range of clients and partners.
Intense conversations, was it intense?
Definitely, and perhaps the word might be deep conversations, because when you have this kind of climate where everybody's relaxed and you have 2-3 days to have round 2 and round 3 in your conversations, you're able really to reflect much more deeply, as opposed to having a scheduled meeting for 1 hour, you meet, you engage, and you leave. In this particular case, you have an evening session, you have an afternoon session, you see the same people, and you can actually move the issues post-reflection as well. So I think the interactive aspect of this forum has been very valuable to us, and we're all captive here for 3 days. It's not just about closing deals. I think really what's very important is to be accessible to new investors and to be able to energize one another to scale up, to speed up, and to synergize.
Mr. Zubairu, I'd like to find out whether the development corporations are able to work together. And I think that this is going to be quite important, because surely we can leverage on a lot of the capital that is sitting at the development corporations. What are the things that you've seen coming through that you feel hopeful you can work closer together with the other development corporations and perhaps pool in funding for big projects on the continent?
Good. Thank you for the opportunity. And again, thanks to President Adesina for the vision to set this up. So for us, the key takeaway from this event is that we have grown our coalition of investors, which leads to your question. We have always wanted to work with a broad coalition of investors so that we can together close transactions faster, together negotiate better, because in the space that we're in, we have to relate with government. We have seen in this forum government being more willing to listen to advice. We've been able to talk to them on how to have different perspectives on a particular issue. We have actually seen one practical case where the government has shifted ground on a particular issue. So we think this is very good, and we think that we can continue to work with investors. This has been a very good intermediation forum whereby we have more project sponsors, we have more investors. We came in here with transactions of about 1.6 billion. Now we're living with opportunities for 3.4 billion.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Mr. Dlamini, let's talk about the Southern African Development Bank. It is such an important institution because it's been involved in some of the big high-profile projects on the continent. I know that Mr. Adesina was talking about the $108 billion infrastructure and power gap that we're experiencing on the continent on a year-to-year basis, and we keep saying, where are we going to get this money from? How much are you able to put on the table over the last 2.5 days? And do you think you can help make a dent in that huge gap? I see Mr. Mboweni also is smiling at that question.
Thank you very much, Elena. Actually, as the Development Bank of Southern Africa, we are quite excited when actually we witness what we are witnessing here actually over the past 2.5 days. Because it really says Africa is now fired up. Africa is now ready to go. I'm hopeful for the future of Africa. Agenda 2063, Sustainable Development Goals 2030, Africa is not going to be left behind. It says the people of Africa are now much more positive. They have every reason to be much more hopeful, because what the stories you heard here are the stories that you never had being told anywhere else before. But as the Development Bank of Southern Africa, in terms of making sure that the ambitions of really networking this continent and making sure that actually we stimulate the economic growth of this continent, we are standing ready. You saw the Gautrain actually coming through today. Mr. Van der Merwe talking about it. You also heard Solomon Asamoah talking also about the SkyTrain in Ghana. We really are ready to make sure that we work with our partners across the continent to make sure that we are able to give Africa a much more better chance of succeeding at its pursuit for Agenda 2063 and Sustainable Development Goals 2030. I'm quite proud and very excited. We will network Africa. You saw the deals in Egypt, down to South Africa, Nigeria, across to Kenya. We will make sure that the infrastructure network also enables trade within the continent accordingly.
Exactly, linking the continent, one of the most important things. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Fayol, I mean, we know the European Investment Bank has been very committed to projects on the continent over the past few years. Coming here and seeing this and witnessing African countries, African development institutions working together and leveraging the kind of power, the boardroom power that we've seen, is this a surprise to you? Have you ever seen this playing out before?
Je vais vous le dire en français. Moi, je suis très impressionné par le succès de ce forum, par la qualité des interventions, par le dynamisme des entrepreneurs et des investisseurs africains que j'ai pu rencontrer, par la qualité du dialogue qu'on a pu nouer grâce à cet événement avec un grand nombre de leaders africains. Et je suis très reconnaissant à la Banque africaine pour avoir permis de montrer au monde entier le dynamisme qu'il y a sur le continent. Alors, nous ne sommes pas une institution qui finançons beaucoup de projets en Afrique. Nous les finançons toujours en partenariat avec d'autres institutions, et en particulier avec la Banque africaine, mais aussi avec d'autres institutions. Et donc, je vois plutôt le projet non pas comme faire en 2 jours des transactions, mais plutôt comme un accélérateur de transactions. Et nous avons discuté beaucoup de projets, je trouve très intéressants, avec un certain nombre d'autorités sur notamment des projets de off-grid. Comment est-ce qu'on arrive à avoir de l'énergie beaucoup moins chère et aussi dans les zones rurales. Je suis très intéressé par le nombre d'innovations dont on a parlé au cours de ces 2 jours. Innovation dans les projets, innovation dans les financements, et ça, je pense que c'est très prometteur. Let me just say one thing for concluding. We have not signed any project here, but I can tell you that the projects that have started here, we will be naming them EIF-enabled projects.
Can I ask you why you haven't signed yet? What is the reason?
Well, the reason is, I mean, we follow always a due diligence process that is not possible in 2 days, basically. We also, as I said, we never finance more than 50% of a project, so we need to discuss with other people involved in financing. Yeah. But to that extent, I mean, the fact that we have started discussion, that we have accelerated, sped up discussion on the financing of projects is already a great success for me.
Merci beaucoup. Okay, so I mean, one of the guests said earlier this week, speed up, scale up, and synergize, and that was so important to hear that. We have about 20 minutes left, and we've got incredible minds on stage. So I want to try and figure out how we can do this, how we can catalyze this process and make it quick. And President Adesina, I'd like to start off with you. What were some of the loggerheads and the bumps in the road that you've been talking about, that you were able to find solutions to? And how do you think that's going to be playing out in the next year? Do you think we'll be able to just speed things up? Because that'll change everything, wouldn't it?
Yes, you know, I think the one big thing with projects that we've been able to do here is you have project risk, market risk, you have financial risk, you have political risk. And so what we all decided we're going to do is to find a way in which we can reduce those risks. And I think it's been a major outcome here is the fact that we started by signing the co-guarantee platform. We have the Garant Co, we have the Islamic Corporation, we have the African Development Bank, we also have Afri-Exim Bank, all of us involved in that as a way of starting. And with all the other multilateral development banks, we are going to do that. So, as I said in the beginning, we want to reduce significantly the risk of financing projects in Africa so projects can land in Africa on a smooth landing strip. The second thing that we were able to do through here is actually work on how we develop bankable projects. I think you just heard it from him. It's that we've been able to put together a very powerful team that we're going to show you on the screen today, actually a digital platform that's bringing together the project developers and the investors. It's going to be digital throughout the year, so we've been able to accomplish that. But I want to say once again, as I said in the beginning, what you're seeing here for us is the power of African financial institutions behind Africa's own vision. And I think for me that is so important, delivering as one. We were talking to the presidents of all the banks here, and they told me, look, we want to meet twice a year, where we are going to talk about the next event, how we are going to talk about the next transaction. I think for me, this delivering as one is so powerful, and Africa's financial market infrastructure backing Africa's vision, that's something I'm taking away from here because it means that we have confidence in our continent.
Thank you. Minister Mboweni, the emerging market route has really hurt perceptions towards all developing economies, including ones on the continent. And South Africa and the rest of the, the big countries in Africa, like Nigeria and even Egypt, have fallen in the hands of investors that are scared to invest in emerging markets. We relied so long on the hot money out of the United States, and here we're talking about leveraging on Africa's money. Do we have enough? And what is your prognosis of the situation?
Well, my experience is that you have equity investments as well from the United States and Europe, in addition to portfolio flows. The current movements that you see amongst the emerging markets are to some extent influenced by the policy position, say, of the US Fed, as the Fed has been tightening the monetary conditions, so has a gap emerged between the interest rate expectations in the US and the emerging markets. That naturally attracts capital back to the United States, and you'll see movements in the dollar versus other currencies on average. So, but we shouldn't panic. It's in the nature of the beast. It happens from time to time. It might be uncomfortable at times, particularly when you're about to go on holiday in Paris. But when you're holidaying in KwaZulu-Natal, it's fine. It's no problem. There are significant investments in South Africa from Germany, the Mercedes-Benz facility in East London, the BMW facility in Roslyn in Pretoria, and others. And naturally, these large investments tend to attract small and medium enterprises around them, the component manufacturers and so on. So all is not lost. I think there are many green shoots that one can see over there, and I think we should be encouraged by that. I just want to say this because you might not come back to me. I really appreciated the point that was made by one of the colleagues here that even if no deal was signed during these 2 days, the fact that we came together and shared ideas and debated issues is far more significant. I think I know a little bit more Africans now than I did a day before yesterday, and I think that's good.
Thank you so very much, Minister. We have enough time to just get a sense from everyone here. And I don't want to ask you to be as concise as possible without reason, but if you could possibly tell me what you're expecting from next year's forum, how do you think we can actually make this and catalyze this, and what are you going to go away with today? What are you going to do to ensure that some of these transactions that you've spoken about are actually going to be signed and going to become a reality? I'm going to start at the far end there. Mr. Zubairu, please start with you, sir.
So very quickly, we have a framework for cooperating with AFDB, Afrexim, IFC, and several other development finance institutions. So we're going to extend that, and we're going to try and reduce, I would say, or not reduce, agree the due diligence checklist that we can all perform and other parties can share. So we don't have to do the same thing all over again. We want to agree a process amongst ourselves. Any one of us can lead it, and all of us will rely on it to process transactions.
Fantastic, thank you. Mr. Tadese.
Well, in all seriousness, I'd really like to say that just about everybody I've spoken to over the past 2-3 days have said their expectations were exceeded. We all go to many forums, many conferences, but the consensus is this has really been exceptional, and this is really kudos to the African Development Bank, President Adesina. But, and the reason I'm just pointing this out is that word travels. The best way to market anything is by success. And through our LinkedIn, we've been sending out lots of messages to our own communities worldwide. And I think the message is going to go out that this has been an exceptional start to a multi-year platform and forum. And so I think in future, we'll see a much bigger group of people attending. We'll see a more diverse group of investors coming in. We'll see more private equity funds. We'll see more sovereign wealth funds. I think it's going to become a very significant go-to event on the African calendar.
That's fantastic news. Thank you so very much, sir. Mr. Ebobise.
Yeah, thank you, Eleni. Really, I agree with what Admasu just said. Expectation exceeded. So allow me to say that next year, I expect to do more deals, to make sure that our deals that we signed today, which are still in development stage, advance quickly. Just focus on deals. We want to do projects. Let's not talk too much, and we do deals. That's what I expect next year.
Thank you, sir. Minister Kaba.
Merci. Effectivement, donc, comme tout le monde l'a dit, le cadre est là. L'engouement est là. Je pense que l'année prochaine, on va mieux se préparer, venir avec des projets encore plus structurés. Peut-être entre les deux éditions, déjà commencer à discuter avec ceux qui s'intéressent à nos projets pour voir comment bien les finaliser pour pouvoir conclure des deals. J'espère surtout que tous autant que nous sommes, nous allons nous atteler à amener dans le cadre de ce marché des projets qui ne sont pas traditionnels, ceux pour lesquels on estime que peut-être les risques sont trop grands et qui pourtant peuvent impacter fortement nos pays. Je pense par exemple au secteur de l'agriculture. Nous avons un pays très rural et chaque fois que nous entendons parler de deals, nous n'avons pas beaucoup de deals dans le secteur de l'agriculture. Et je pense que le secteur de l'agriculture, c'est celui-là qui va surtout transformer en profondeur et qui va porter la croissance et le développement à la porte de beaucoup de nos concitoyens. Donc nous allons travailler pour que les projets qui sont dans les secteurs qui ne sont pas bien présents puissent être, on va dire, mieux préparés et matures pour pouvoir être présentés sur la plateforme. Je vous remercie.
Premier.
Firstly, I hope we have exceeded, as the host, we have exceeded your expectations. That's the first expectation I had, was that we will exceed your expectation. Secondly, this forum has exceeded my expectation. I thought we will contribute perhaps 5 billion rands to the president's 20 billion rands already. So we have exceeded our expectation because, as I said, it's 6.8 billion rands already. And if I was to talk about next year, I think as South Africa, we will be better prepared next year. The number of projects that South Africa put in the project book wasn't as many as I expected. Minister Mboweni has got a very tight fiscal environment. So if we could put less pressure on him and bring a lot of our infrastructure projects here to the forum, and I can feel there's lots of African money that's there. So Minister Mboweni will sleep a bit better if we bring more projects into the forum next year. And I think we will be better prepared next year.
Minister Mboweni, are you going to bed rested tonight? Are you going to sleep well, do you think?
Yes, I'll sleep well. But after I've seen the last invoices from the suppliers.
I'm curious. You know, I'm going to pivot the last question a bit. I want to find out, was there things like inter-country risk, currency risk that was mentioned? How do we de-risk the continent in that sense? So you've got barriers, you've got currency worries, you've got all these things that are playing out. I'd like to pose this to Professor Orama, because you're a development agency. I mean, you know exactly what it's like to deal with currency problems. And I think it's also really important to note that Africa as a whole has been issuing a lot more euro bonds and dollar-denominated bonds, and the IMF has mentioned that this is a risk. And I wonder if we just start funding ourselves, that we'll be able to take that risk out of these countries that are developing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, if we borrowed in dollars of euro and so on, we will naturally be exposed to those risks. However, if we use them to create the kind of wealth that enables us to integrate to the global economy, then we are managing those risks better. But beyond that, we spoke a lot about looking inwards, Africa resource mobilization, that we have a lot of money, the pension funds, who are generating savings in local currencies. So why can't we borrow those local currencies? Why can't we have a situation where we are also able to have some leading African currencies that we can be exposed to? Because we are also promoting intra-regional trade. We are promoting continental free trade areas. So if we are exposed to, say, Rand, for example, and we trade more with South Africa, we probably are in a better position to manage it. So as we make that transition from a balkanized, fragmented continent to a more integrated continent, my vision is a continent that will gradually begin to reduce its dependence on outside capital and start using its own capital. We cannot have the middle class that is expanding. And we cannot have the kind of resources we have with pension funds and other sources of funding and continue to go cap in hand every time to other markets to borrow. If we do that, we will always be dependent on them. They say that those who go are borrowing go are sorrowing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. President Adesina, I just came back from Nigeria. In fact, I was in Dakar, and then before that I was in Nigeria. And I have to say, the agriculture sector is absolutely booming. And I know that you had such a strong, big part to play in that. You were able to turn around an entire sector of an economy. What is your vision for all the sectors that are going to drive African growth?
Yeah, well, the critical thing is that we have to make sure that whatever we do is structural, that is able to address the issue of huge problems we have with jobs in Africa. I don't believe the future of Africa's youth lies in Europe at all. I don't think it lies also at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. It must lie in an Africa that's able to grow well. But when you're trying to grow well, you have to pay attention to three things. First is that you have to close the infrastructure deficit, which is energy, roads, rail, transport, all the things that we've been talking about here. Second is get a lot of financing into the hands of young people, which we talked quite a lot about, small and medium-sized enterprises, very, very important. And the third thing, of course, is to make sure that, as I said, no bird flies with only one wing. It flies with two. So we've got to make sure we get finance in the hands of women on the continent to be able to do that. But I want to say something back to what you were saying about what the next event is going to look like next year. We can't but improve. We have to get better. We'll get better. We'll plan better. We'll synergize better. Africa deserves better. And so we will all just continue to improve. We must have confidence in this continent, but move Africa forward relentlessly. That's what we have. And those who created us as institutions, some of them are alive, some are not alive. When they look down, they must have the confidence that what their vision was, to constantly move Africa forward, is what we do. And that's what we all here, and you all that are here, have committed yourself to do. Let's do more of that.
Mr. President, just on next year, with so many lessons learned, this surpassed everyone's expectations. Did it surpass your expectations? Did you think that it was going to be this successful, that you'd be able to leverage this much capital in 3 days?
Well, my board members are here. My partners are here. As a person, I don't believe in flags. I don't believe in, this is flag of African Development Bank, this is flag of somebody else. No, it's the power of the collective that really matters. And, when you have people working together as teams, we have a panel this morning, and Mujiri Masai, who is actually an African that's leading the Toronto Raptors. And he was talking to us about, you got to play together. You got to work as a team. You have to win as a team. And I think what you see here is the way in which we want to work together. Africa is one that needs to win. And we want Africa's name up there in gold all the time.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for my incredible panelists today. Mr. President, thank you very much for your time. My ministers from South Africa and Cote d'Ivoire, and of course the Premier, all our incredible heads of all the development banks, thank you very much for joining us today. Now, this is a day of firsts, right? This is a forum of a lot of firsts. And you alluded to it a little earlier, so you took my firepower away, but I'm going to mention that...
Can I thank a few folks? So we're just closing out.
Yeah.
I think it's important for me to just close out and say that I want to thank all my vice presidents of the bank that are here. Please stand up wherever you are. The vice president of the bank, tremendous work. Amadou Hart led a lot of work. Jennifer Blanque, and also Pierre Ghislaine, and also VP Shabalala. Well, thank you very much. They never slept. Most of the bank staff never slept. Victor Oladokun, who has been here, and his team for media, thank you very much for a great job. I want to thank the CNBC Africa. Of course, they've been doing this all across for us. I know that Eleni is going to get it on CNN for us, so I want to thank Eleni. But also South Africa's own General Information Service. I want to thank the security staff. Don't you feel secure in this place? The communication staff, you know, all the people that did all this great work. I want to thank publicists. How comfortable is it? Publicists did a fantastic job of doing this for us. I also want to say that Petrolin, you know, we have one of our foremost investors. If he might stand, Mr. Samuel Dosu Aworet is a billionaire investor, big supporter for us. Thank you for your confidence in Africa. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I think a round of applause for the incredible people in this room that made this happen, and of course, it wouldn't have been possible without your efforts and your collaboration. So I was saying a lot of firsts, and it's absolutely so impressive. Never before have we seen this kind of collaboration, and never before have we seen an organization like the African Development Bank coming together and making things easier to facilitate transactions. I think it's now time to unveil the digital platform, which is going to change the way we do business completely on the continent. I'd like to just get that slideshow up, if I may, please. Okay, let me go through it very quickly for you until we get some of those images up for you. So over the last 3 days, the Africa Investment Forum has convened project sponsors, lenders, investors, transactions advisors, and governments to participate in concrete and focused sessions. But the party does not end today. From here, the conversation goes digital. We've developed a digital platform. It's called The Platform, in partnership with the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB, who launched a similar platform called Connect Americas in 2014. So this platform is going to change the way you do business. It's called the AIF platform, and will adopt and reflect 4 years of learning and software development improvements made by the IDB and its technical partner, the Pentagon Tech. The platform will launch with immediate access to Connect America's 200,000 businesses and users from 100 countries. Many of these are potential investors and trade partners for Africa. The platform is Africa Investment Forum's digital marketplace, offering investors, project sponsors, and providers of professional services a live debate of investment opportunities in Africa, as well as matchmaking opportunities and capabilities among participants. So, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to join the platform. A big congratulations to you, President Adesina. You've actually got this on the screen right now. You can take a look at what it has to offer. And I'm just going to repeat this: 200,000 businesses over 100 countries. You'll be able to engage with investors and looking at projects on a global scale.
Yeah. Can I just say that we want to actually thank the Inter-American Development Bank. The president of Inter-American Development Bank, Luis Moreno, is the one that actually helped us to put this up, connecting Latin America to Africa. Please thank them. He's doing a fantastic job with us. And they never charge us a penny for it.
And it's going live on the 1st of December. I mean, literally, it's just a few days away. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for joining us. This was the closing of the Africa Investment Forum 2018. I really hope we see you next year. Thank you so very much, and thank you once again to our panelists.